Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amanda Harper, the Assistant Statewide Care Manager Coordinator. Welcome to our CCO staff and provider information session. Just a reminder that these info sessions occur on the second and fourth Wednesday of each month at noon. We aim to keep them under an hour. The last session was on February 13th, and it was Quality of the Life Plan. That session is posted to our website. The link is at the bottom of this slide. Also, we had on March 13th a quarterly Care Managers Conference that had a lot of great information regarding self-direction, START, the enrollment process, or excuse me, the LCED and eligibility process. So we encourage that you find that also on the website, that recording was shared recently through the advisory. Today's session is Choices, CCO Enrollment, Transfer, and Disenrollment. The recording and the PowerPoint for this session will also be made available at the link at the bottom of this slide, so you can obtain this PowerPoint when it is shared to the website at this link. We will announce that through the Care Coordination Advisory that will be shared within a few days from today's presentation. The next session will be session 4 on April 10th. It's going to be covering employment services and how employment services are listed in the life plan. The registration for that session will be available on the website at the link below, and that will also be shared through the advisory. The registration is not available yet, so when you see that through the advisory, you'll know that you can go and sign up for that topic. All right, so for today, I just want to note that this training is going to address enrollment, disenrollment, and transfers into and out of CCO programs through the Choices system. Choices, just to give a brief overview, I'm sure many of you know exactly what it is, but just to be clear, Choices is the OPWDD's internal electronic repository containing program information for individuals receiving services from OPWDD service providers. So CCO does have its own HIT system, Metasced. That is not what we'll be talking about today. If you have questions specific to enrollment and information management through your system Metasced, that is, you'll need to refer those questions to your CCO leaderships. Today we'll focus heavily on the OPWDD system and its functionality, but also touch on some of the policy requirements for these enrollment, transfer, and withdrawal actions. Please note that we'll be reviewing the minimum standards that are required by OPWDD, so any additional requirements and practices that you've been trained in that are required by your CCO must be followed in addition to what we review here today. We do recognize that CCO organizational structures vary and that there are intake staffs and intake specialists and care planning roles that are all assigned to do these different functions through enrollment, transfer, and withdrawal. So we will refer throughout to say CCO, and we understand that these functions aren't all necessarily being done by the care manager that's been assigned to the person. There's a lot of information that's going to be shared, so we ask that you listen, and many of your questions will hopefully be answered throughout, but we will leave time at the conclusion of the presentation to review what's been submitted through the Q&A and to answer what we can. Additional questions that you have, please follow up with your with your CCO leadership to see if these questions have been answered, and if they're not sure, they can reach out to contacts with OPWDD for guidance. Okay. So as we talked about, this training is going to focus on the choices form, so we'll run through quick what these forms are. The CCO1 that we'll refer to is for CCO enrollment. CCO2 is for disenrollment and transfers to different program codes within the same CCO. The CCO Level of Care Eligibility Determination Transmittal form is just the form that transmits the LCED effective date into choices so that it can go into our tab system. The CCO documentation submission form is for all the documents that are required and pertinent for eligibility determination and service authorization. You can find some very helpful user guides at the link on this slide that they're all listed on the choices user page. Okay, also on the choices user page, I just want to note that there are online trainings that focus on general information about how to use choices and how to navigate the various components of the application through SLMS. So there'll be, you'll see a lot of information listed on this choices page. These forms are listed under CCO information, but there's also trainings to help people that come in as new users to choices to get familiar. Okay, so if you do not have access to choices, because all of this is performed through the choices platform, the CCO enrollments are tracked in the OPWDD choices system, and CCO users may access current enrollments via choices at any time. That the CCO is required to use the choices system to submit enrollments, disenrollments for all of your enrollees. So if you do not have access to choices, please contact your CCO supervisor. There should be a process in place to submit the UAR, the user access request form, that this link can, or excuse me, the link to the UAR form can be found at the choices link on slide 4 in the previous slide. We ask that you're very careful in how you fill these out, that you really follow the directions. They're pretty self-explanatory, but small errors can slow the processing of the form and cause it to be sent back to you. So we ask that you carefully review the instructions, that supervisors are reviewing these before they're submitted to ensure that there's no errors so that they can be processed as quickly as possible. There are the user guides that were reference, we already went through that, that's on the OPWDD website. The role that you need to be able to access the CCO 1 and 2 and the other forms that were referenced, those roles are listed in the user guide. So when you're filling out a UAR, that can help you to know what role you need to be able to do this function. So the choices site also does provide that there is a help desk, that if you're having issues within choices, that you can submit questions to the help desk. It's help.desk@opwdd.ny.gov, and you would want to report exactly what the issue is that you're having with the exact text from your error message and as much information as possible so that they can get back to you. All right, so we'll start with, we're going to go through the CCO 1, so we'll touch on some of the requirements for CCO enrollment. When a CCO 1 is submitted, the care manager is attesting to all of the enrollment requirements being met. So to begin, for CCO enrollment, that the person that wishes to enroll, that the person or legal guardian or representative must sign the appropriate consent. Once all of the eligibility requirements are met, the CCO staff will enter the CCO 1 form into choices, and then this communicates with the tab system to validate that all of the enrollment requirements are met. The CCO verifies enrollments and generates the DOH 5234 or the Basic Plan Support Notice of Enrollment, the Basic HCBS Plan Support Notice of Enrollment, and uploads it into choices and sends this notice to the individual and notifies the DDRO. So we just want to note that when you submit the CCO 1 into choices, it refers to that it validates with tabs the eligibility. So you'll see that there is going to be messages that will come up, and we'll cover that a little bit later, but that is an important piece to notice, that is going to let you know if there's anything that's preventing the person from enrolling. But if all of those pieces are in place, all enrollments go forward to the first of the following month. So once this process is followed, enrollment will be for the first of the following month. So the eligibility requirements, a CCO can enroll when somebody has OPWDD eligibility that's been confirmed. The level of care eligibility is determined, so that LCED date has been entered, and we'll go through that form as well, and that Medicaid is obtained, so ensuring that the person has active Medicaid and that it's the correct type of Medicaid for CCO. The conference that I referenced on March 13th, at the beginning, and there is a slide available through the advisory. At the beginning, we did touch on Medicaid, and there's a link to the chart within there that will, if you need a refresher on the types of Medicaid that are allowed with CCO, you can go to that presentation, the quarterly conference from March 13th. Okay. So with the CCO1 entering enrollments into choices, the CCO staff enters the enrollments. The CCO, so when you're filling out this form, you're inputting the name of the CCO, the DDSO, the program code that the person is enrolling in. So that program code is going to reflect the region, and that's going to coincide with the DDSO, and it's going to reflect the service. So you'll be choosing for your CCO whether the person is enrolling in basic or in health home. There's been a few updates to the CCO1 to try to help reduce some of the errors. So if when you go into the CCO1, you select your DDSO first, only the program codes within that DDSO will be available in the drop down to make sure that you're choosing the right one. The form also now has a yellow banner that comes up that prompts the staff to review and make sure that that form is being reviewed for accuracy prior to submission. So please make sure that you're checking that you've chosen the correct DDSO code and program code for the person, that it must coincide with what they have consented to. So when you submit the CCO1, a signed consent, you must have a signed consent on file for the health home or basic home and community-based support, HCBS, plan support service. So you have to have that consent prior to submitting your CCO1, and to make sure that the individual meets all of the eligibility criteria that we covered on the previous slide. Tabs will validate the enrollment. And you'll see there's some examples of some of the messages that might come up at the very bottom of the form. So they're pending reasons, and you'll see the one example, MCD, is no Medicaid eligibility. So you need to go back to your local Medicaid office to determine what the issue is with Medicaid. The LOC, that means that the individual does not have a current level of care on file, so you'll want to verify that that was done, and if you know that it was completed and signed and has an effective date, you'll follow up with your regional office if it is an initial LCED to make sure that they have done that transmittal form, and we'll touch on the transmittal form a little later in this presentation, but really make sure that you are looking at those reasons. So to continue with the CCO1, enrollment into the program, like I said, will be effective the first of the following month. So enrollments never go back, they always go forward to the first of the following month. So if you submit a CCO1 on March 6th, then all the enrollment requirements are met, and you see that the only pending reason is FUT for future date, that they will enroll on 4/1. If there are pending issues, a second CCO1 does not need to be submitted. So for people that were submitting these forms back in the MSC world, when you corrected things, another MSC1 would be submitted. That is not required for the CCO1. Once all of those pending reasons are resolved, then the CCO1 will process for the first of the following month. If you submit another CCO1, it's only going to go into save status, and it's going to give you an alert that there is another pending add. So you really only need to resolve the issues on that initial CCO1 for that to enroll. So I hope that makes sense. If there's any questions, we'll touch on it at the end. Please work with your supervisor if pending reasons are resolved, that you've verified that all of the reasons that are holding up that CCO1 are resolved, and the person still does not enroll the first of the following month. Our system is not perfect, and sometimes there are glitchy things that happen, and we absolutely want to assist you with some of the things that might be preventing enrollment. We'll touch on at the end of this presentation some of the reasons why we may do a manual tabs override that would bring back an enrollment to the date that it should have enrolled if the CCO has verified that the person has met all of the requirements and that something outside of your control is preventing that from going through. So you can contact, like I said, if you know that the reasons have been resolved, you verified that, and they still haven't enrolled, you can contact your DDRO, CCSL, your Care Coordination Support Liaison. So you see the link here. It can also be found from our web page if you are on the OPWDD site and you go to providers, the providers tab, and go down to care coordination organizations, the care coordination tab, you'll see contacts. And under contacts is the CCSL contact information. Just a reminder that the CCO1 is a snapshot from when the form is submitted, so those reasons aren't going to update on the CCO1. When you go back to the form, it's going to show the same reasons from the time that you submitted it. So working closely with your DDRO on some of the reasons that you're trying to resolve will help you to determine if those reasons are resolved if you have any questions or issues. Okay. So the next form that we'll cover is the LCED date transmittal form. So we'll start with touching quick on the level of care. So the process of obtaining a physician's signature on the initial LCED will vary. It's going to differ based on the region that you're located in. This information was also shared recently through the Care Coordination Advisory. So for a quick review, state physicians are available in the regional office to regional office front door staff in parts of Region 3, the Hudson Valley and Taconic districts only, and Region 4 for New York City. If a state physician is available, the DDRO staff will upload the completed initial LCED to the individual's choices record. If a state physician is not available, CCO staff will upload the completed initial LCED form into the individual's choices record and notify the DDRO. So this piece has to be completed prior to the submission of the LCED transmittal form. There is, as I said on 313 for the Care Managers Quarterly Conference, there is a presentation that was done on level of care. So please, if you're looking for more information on this topic and you haven't reviewed that conference, like I said, the PowerPoint and the recording is available on our site. So for the LCED transmittal form, this form is used to record and file the LCED effective date. So like I had said, those user guides are going to tell you what level you would need to have to create, edit, submit, or just view these forms. So a CCO 2 or a CCO level 2 is what's required to be able to complete the LCED transmittal form. And like I said, this is simply to take that effective LCED date and transmit it through choices into tabs to allow for enrollment, because it's an enrollment requirement. This form can be used by DDRO staff to file the initial LCED effective date, and for CCO staff to file the annual recertification review date on an annual basis. Once the LCED is determined, the DDRO staff will complete this transmittal form in choices, and then it will be transmitted to tabs. And like I said, the CCO completes this form for redeterminations. If you put in the LCED date and it's incorrect, if you can submit another one, and the most recent date is what's going to be reflected on file. So if you put in the wrong date and you go, you put the wrong year and you put it far ahead, then you'll need to reach out to the DDRO for assistance with correcting that. But if you do, put in the date as the 6th and it was actually the 7th, you can submit another form, and it's just going to update it to that most current date. All right, so moving on to the CCO2 disenrollments and transfers and choices. The CCO2 form is used to disenroll somebody from CCO, for voluntary withdrawals, and for transfer of program codes within the same CCO. So this piece is somewhat different, and I just want to focus on this, that when you want to change from health home to basic or basic to health home, or you're moving from one county to another and you're staying in the same CCO, so you're not transferring to another CCO, but somebody is staying with you, you'll see on the CCO2 that there is a portion where you mark that the person is changing program codes within the same CCO, and that's all that is required to allow for disenrollment from the one program code at the end of the month and enrollment into the new program code the first of the following month. We've had a lot of errors come in where somebody submits a CCO1 to enroll somebody into the new service within the same CCO, and then that CCO2 isn't going to process, that you'll get an error on it, that there is a pending add, and it's going to be held up in the system, and you'll need to reach out to the DDRO for assistance. So we want to make sure that everybody understands that the CCO2 form to transfer program codes within the same CCO is all one action done on the CCO2. And if you have issues with enrollment for the first of the following month, for whatever reason, to reach out to your DDRO, but that action is all completed on the same form. I hope I haven't overemphasized that. Just want to make it clear. Okay, so for reasons for disenrollment from the health home service or basic HCBS plan support, this occurs when somebody is no longer enrolled in Medicaid, no longer residing in an eligible or appropriate setting, enrolled in another comprehensive care management program, no longer residing in New York State, and no longer they no longer meet the OPWDD eligibility or level of care. Just a note here that when a disenrollment is submitted for reason 5, it will show as submitted and go through to the DDRO for approval, and it will not process until the DDRO has verified and approved that disenrollment. There's only 2 reasons that do that, and the second one will be covered on the next slide. And the last reason is when somebody is confirmed deceased. So disenrollment means that the individual no longer meets the criteria to continue enrollment in this service, Please note that if somebody is moving to an ineligible setting, such as an ICF, that the CCO must complete the CCO2 for the day prior, for at least the day prior to them moving, to allow for their enrollment into the new program. It can't be on the day that somebody moves or intends to enroll in the new program, because of the edits that are set up that are going to block the person from being able to actually enroll in that service. And it can create issues with them being able to access the person's record and being able to bill, and this will need to be corrected. It'll come back to you. So please make sure, you know, for example, somebody moves into an ICF on the 6th, they have to be at least disenrolled on the 5th to allow for them to enroll in that next program. Okay. Also, for, the reasons of no longer enrolled in Medicaid, no longer residing in an appropriate setting, and confirmed deceased, these are reasons that you will be able to input the date. So when I say have somebody disenroll on the 5th, if they're no longer residing in an appropriate setting, for that reason you can input the date. You'll notice for these other reasons that it will go forward to the end of the month. So keeping that in mind when selecting reasons, of making sure that you're choosing the correct reason. Reasons for voluntary withdrawal: if you're transferring to another CCO, if you're transferring from the CCO health home, or if you're transferring from CCO health home to basic plan support, or withdrawing from enrollment in CCO care management services. So as with loss of eligibility, this last reason, number 3 here, is submitted to the DDRO for verification and approval. We will touch on transferring to another CCO, that is the use of the CCO2 form and the new CCO using a CCO1. But as we said, reason number 2 is only done through the CCO2. Okay. So for voluntary withdrawals and waiver enrollment, we'll just touch on quick what goes into this process before going into the CCO2. Okay. So just touching on the forms that are required here, that if an individual voluntarily withdraws and is signing either the 5058 for adults or the 5202 for children, that form is done first prior to submitting the CCO2. So making sure that paperwork is in place before submitting the CCO2, that this withdrawal then goes into choices, that the DDRO must next confirm that the individual is withdrawing, and will confirm that on the CCO2 form, that the CCO will monitor choices, and you'll see when that has gone through. And it'll be confirmed, and the CCO will generate the 5235 voluntary withdrawal, or for HCBS basic plan support, the disenrollment NOD. The CCO then sends the notice and notifies the DDRO. So just a reminder of the process that is required through the use of the CCO2 form. Transferring to another CCO, just want to highlight that the care manager must provide the new CCO with the following documents that are listed, and upload them to Choices Supporting Documents. That the CCO needs to add the ISP or the life plan, the most recent DDP2 or CAS, the initial LCED and most current LCED, and any additional documents that are required to support the person. Transferring to another CCO, the actions that take place to let this happen in the system and what needs to be happening with the care planning team. To ensure the continuity of care, we require that there's a discussion when somebody is asking to change CCOs, to help the person to plan for this at the time that they're asking, that the current CCO must upload the documents that are mentioned on the previous slide, and the transfer would be effective the first day of the following month. So the CCOs involved really have to carefully plan this transfer, that the CCO that the person is disenrolling from needs to make sure when you complete this paperwork that the receiving CCO, that you've been in communication, that there's coordination, and that when that disenrollment goes through, that there is a CCO1 to pick up that person for the first of the following month to avoid any gap in service. Only one CCO can bill for an individual in a given month. The current CCO must have the signed consent to withdraw, and the new CCO must obtain the consent to enroll. So those pieces need to be in place, and really working together, that within the same regions, there's CCOs that are quite familiar with each other and, are doing this often and are learning who the staff are to speak to, but of really making sure that there's good collaboration and knowing who to reach out to timely to make sure that these enrollments and disenrollments are processed correctly, and that it's not belaboring the process and causing somebody to remain in a service that they're looking to change. So of really making sure when somebody makes this request that there's good coordination, communication, and follow-up to make it effective, as close to when they're requesting as possible. To transfer from services, to transfer from health home to basic HCBS plan support, as far as the consents that are required, they're listed here on this slide, that in order to do this action on the CCO2, these consents need to be completed, the 5058, or the consent for participation in basic HCBS plan support, and entering this information onto the CCO2 form. And for transferring the other way from basic HCBS plan support into health home, making sure that the consent is signed and that the withdraw from basic HCBS plan support have been signed, and that the right forms are in place before completing that action. Want to touch on non-Medicaid care management. So a reminder that this service is for Willowbrook class members that are residing in an ICF or a nursing home or other non-qualifying settings, the individuals who qualify for CCO but are not eligible for Medicaid, for children that are enrolled in early intervention or EI. The enrollments and disenrollments in non-Medicaid care management is based on DDR approval. So this is submitted through a DDP-1 form to your DDRO. The CCO1 and CCO2 forms are not used for this service. So I think people have a pretty clear idea on that. We haven't had questions about that in a while, but we just want to make sure that we're emphasizing that when covering the use of these forms. All right. Okay, so for manual overrides, these are our last two slides before we wrap up and can look at some of the questions, if there's any questions that have come in. So when we refer to manual overrides, this is, as I was talking about, and we'll go through the overrides as they relate to enrollment, disenrollment, or errors. These are submitted to your DDRO, as we had mentioned, the Care Coordination Support Liaisons, also called CCSLs. They were formerly the MSC Regional Liaisons, that these staff you would reach out to if you're having any of the following issues. Enrollment issues, if an individual is not enrolled on the date that they were eligible for the service, and system issues are preventing the enrollment. So this really requires that you're doing due diligence to verify that all of the eligibility requirements were met and that somebody truly should have enrolled, and for some reason that enrollment was delayed. So like I said, enrollments are always the first of the following month. So this is after errors. If an error is resolved on 3/1, that person's going to enroll on 4/1, that it has to be the first of the following month, even if an error is resolved on the first, that the CCO roster is generated on the first, at midnight on the first. So if something is corrected after that, then the person's going to pend forward to a future date for the first of the following month. So I hope that makes sense. I don't want to confuse anybody. I want to make sure that it's clear that if you think somebody, if you know and you verified that somebody should have enrolled on the first and they didn't, that you can reach out to your DDRO for assistance on that enrollment date. For disenrollment issues, if an individual disenrolls for the wrong reason or on the wrong date, like as we had talked about with the ICF, if they are enrolled on the wrong date and it's preventing another enrollment, you can reach out to the DDRO. If it's the reverse situation and somebody is coming to you from another program and that program does not process a disenrollment and it is preventing you from enrolling them in CCO, but they are no longer in that program, then you can also submit an override. If somebody is taken out of an ICF on the first, they'll enroll the first of the following month. So this is if you know somebody that it just isn't getting done, that it's showing up that there's an error, that they're in a residential program or in some type of a program that you know they're no longer in and it's preventing enrollment into your program, that's when you would reach out to the DDRO. Also, you can reach out if you need to reinstate somebody's enrollment, if you've sent them their NOD and provided the 10-day notice period and they're reaching out to say, you know what, I would like to, you haven't been able to get in contact with me, but I'd like to re-engage with the service, or whatever is determined through the CCO that somebody no longer is looking to reinstate their enrollment, that you can reach out and we can re-enroll somebody if the DDRO verifies that and it meets the need to do that. And lastly, the CCO form, if a CCO form, either a 1 or 2, is processed in error, and in these instances, it's if a form the errors will never correct because you are trying to enroll somebody in a program for a county that they don't live in, and it's not going to clear up. You can reach out to the DDRO for assistance with that. If an incorrect enrollment is effective on the CCO roster, the CCO must process a CCO2 to correct the enrollment for the first of the following months. So you would not contact the DDRO for that. Enrollments must match what the person has consented to. Okay, so lastly, for manual overrides enrollments, when a manual override is requested to correct an enrollment date, the requested enrollment date will be reflected on the CCO roster the first of the following month, the first of the month following when the correction is made in tabs. So we'll run through an example of this. The January roster, so for your CCO, if the January roster didn't include someone that the CCO verified should have been enrolled, the CCO must ensure that the new enrollee requirements are met, so that's the first step. If somebody should have enrolled on January 1st, then the care manager is making sure that on one hand they're reaching out to the DDRO to get this corrected, but in the interim they are treating as though the person has enrolled on January 1st and they are adhering to the requirements of enrollment for the face-to-face meeting, the CCO care manager checklist, the comprehensive assessment process, and plan development. They're reaching out to the CCO to contact the CCO is reaching out to the CCSL, and the CCSL works with central office to complete the manual override. The CCSL confirms with the CCO staff that an override has been completed, and the person will be on the February roster with a January 1 enrollment date. So the person will be on the roster the first of the month following the override being completed, and the enrollment date will be reflected on this. So hopefully this example helps to paint a picture for, in these few and far between instances that you do need some type of manual correction, how that will work with your systems. Okay, so thank you very much. We're going to pause for a moment to review any questions that have come in and give some time to answer what we can. All right, we have 3 questions. One question was asking to repeat when the approval for withdrawal needs to go through the DDRO, and that is when somebody is no longer eligible for OPWD services or no longer meets level of care, or when somebody is voluntarily withdrawing, so somebody is choosing to no longer have a care management service. Those reasons go to the DDRO, and you'll see that the forms will show as submitted. The next question.
The next question that came in, this is Angie, for a CCO to CCO transfer, at what point in the transfer process should the DOH 5058 be signed? The care manager should be working with the individual and the CCO in which the person is transferring to make sure that the form is signed at the most appropriate time to continue to facilitate that transition that needs to take place. So the CCO working with the individual needs to make sure that all of the information that needs to be shared is uploaded in choices and shared appropriately within the time frame.
Okay, and lastly, does the annual LCED recertification need to be uploaded to choices? That is not a requirement. That the LCED transmittal form needs to be completed annually in choices, but if there is a request for that information, it can be uploaded to choices. All right, we'll look to see if there's anything else.
Lots of thank yous. Great job, Amanda.
Excellent. I really appreciate the people that took the time to participate today. Like I said, this will be recorded and posted to the website with the PowerPoint, and our next session will be on April 10th on employment services. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.